Record that there. Hi, Cindy. Wow. Okay, so we're just going to dive in and start here. And a lot of people I know wanted to be here and are that's why we're recording for later so that
Yeah.
works out. I want to say good morning and welcome. This is a Northeast Death Care collaborative sponsored conversation between me and Amy Connelly Dawson about Phones of the Wind and how to get started with one, and really just sharing experiences. And we got on the phone last night for the first time and realized that we had to stop talking because
We're like old friends.
it just goes on and on. So I apologize for my noisy air conditioner. It's not possible to do this without one right now. And I'm just really glad that people are here and interested in both the topic and in hanging out together and talking about it. I think that so the Northeast Death Care Collaborative, just to let you know, is I put the link to our Facebook group up in the chat, and we are a group of people coming together in this space on Facebook mostly, um, to share across professions in death adjacent fields. So a lot of doulas and hospice nurses and palliative care doctors and home health aides and a lot of family caregivers are in the group, and people working adjacent to death, but also excuse me, medical examiners and burial ground managers and people in all kinds of professions, EMTs, um, people in all kinds of professions that are death adjacent and who want a place to share where we're not all siloed and where we can have conversation about the things that are important to us. So I had this idea that people call Amy or write to her all the time to ask about how to set up a phone of the wind. And I was like, wow, we should just have this conversation together because I get those calls too. I think a lot fewer than you do, maybe.
Go a lot, go a lot.
Right, which is great for me, but I really enjoy them. And so we thought we'd start by each of us really briefly describing how we met the phone of the wind. And it's funny that I'm back. I'm having this. Usually, I have when I'm recording Zoom stuff, I do it in my closet upstairs, but there's no air conditioning in my closet upstairs, so I am in my office today. And but this is the exact spot where I first heard of the phone of the wind. And I was tucked into the corner of my office, actually in a hospital bed, recovering from surgery in 2016. And I was listening to a podcast from This American Life, the public radio show, and all of a sudden somebody's describing the phone of the wind and talking about Itaru Sasaki and his garden in Japan and his cousin and the whole origin story of the phone of the wind. And I'm listening to this, and it was like the universe went still for me. I was hearing something that was, it was like being introduced to my spirit, and my spirit came to meet it at the door, right? And that's how it felt. And I was like, I mean, can we just do this? It was after Fukushima, and the phone had been installed on the hillside, and um, there there were photos of it in the. I was watching. I was able to see because I went and looked at the a magazine article that had photos. I wrote to the person who did the story for This American Life, and I said, is there any reason we shouldn't do this in our own spaces, in our own lives, create this space for these conversations? And she couldn't think of any reason not to, or that there was some sort of proprietary hoo-ha about it. And so I went ahead and I created my first phone, which was a traveling phone that I took to the National Home Funeral Alliance conference that year. And I was there. I also make burial shrouds, so I was there with the shrouding. That was sort of my function there. But I set up the phone. I asked if I could set up the phone in this garden, um, and I brought a sort of a mosquito net tent to make a booth, to make a sort of an enclosed space, and I hung it from a branch, and I put the phone and a stool inside this little sort of gossamer space, and I could see out the back window of the conference center into the garden, and I could like peek once in a while and say, oh, somebody's there. And I let people know, and I set it up. I was there for 2 days, and I didn't ever pick up the phone myself until I went to pack it up. And I had feedback from people. People really loved it. And I went to pack it up, and I sat down on the stool, and I went, oh, I've never used the phone of the wind. I've heard about it. I've created one to bring to people, but I had actually never picked up the phone. And so I sat for a minute, and I really thought I was gonna pretend to talk to my dad. Like that was sort of my plan. I'd pick it up and I'd say, hi, Dad. And it is not what happened, because I picked up the phone and I put it to my ear, and it had the ocean inside it. And then I heard a voice, and it was not my father. It was my friend Betsy, and it was her voice. And she said, hi, doll. And I hung up the phone real fast because I was not expecting that it was real. And it would have been neat to talk to my dad, but really the person I want to talk to when I pick up the phone of the wind is Betsy. And what happened, I'm so emotional right now, but what happened for me in that moment was that um, I had created this container for something, not knowing what it was really for. I was just pulled into it and sort of compelled to keep moving forward. And in that moment, when I picked up my phone that had been sort of initiated by this other group of people at the conference, um, it was so real to me. And it became, so now when I visit, I like to visit wind phones when I come across them someplace, or I hear one nearby to me. And I approach with immense reverence for the unknown. And I think there's something so gentle about picking up something as familiar as a telephone, and being open to whatever might happen in that space, and open to hearing the voices in ourselves, and open to hearing the voices around us. And um, so for me, um, the phone of the wind is spiritual work. It's ways to connect with people. It's ways to leave something that's an opportunity for someone else to have some healing. Um, all of this can happen in that space. Um, and so, I created a web page for the phone of the wind because I wanted people to learn about it. And then Amy comes along and creates this amazing locator map. And suddenly I'm able to see all these sort of points of light across the globe of people who were affected the same way I was by this very simple story of a man and a telephone and his garden. So, with all of that, I will pass it over to you, Amy. How did you meet the phone of the wind?
Well, good morning, everyone. A few of you have already like met online. I'm Amy. I'm the one behind my wind phone when you get the emails or the Facebook posts and all that. Um, Most of you have maybe already read this, but uh, my 25-year-old daughter was fighting a terminal illness, and I was reading a lot about grief. I was a teacher. I'm retired now, and uh, was trying to figure out how to kind of move forward in this space of not even really acknowledging that I really believed that she was going to die. Everybody said that, and I was like, oh no, she's going to pull out. But I had started reading books and things, articles and all that, and I came across, and I can't even remember, and I know most of us have experienced grief at some level in order to be connecting with a wind phone in the way in which we do. But the first year of during Emily's sickness, the last year, and then the first year after she died, I don't remember a whole lot. So when people are like, when did you? What I kind, you know what? It's also fuzzy to me. However, I learned about it before Emily died. Emily and I had talked about it. She thought it was really cool. I had a little book, the Mr. Hiroshima Garden book, and she thought it was really cool. And Emily was a young woman with special needs. Her phone was her world. It connected her to the outside world. Her brother, her sister, me, and her dad, she called us constantly, she texted us constantly. So it made so much sense to me in the middle of my grief. And Emily passed away 2 weeks into COVID. And so there was no support, and there was, we all remember that.
Hmm.
And so I started the website quite far before I hit publish, more because it was therapeutic for me. And so that's how I started getting involved with wind phones. I did create a wind phone. So to segue as far as, we talked about, let's talk about and have Q&A about creating wind phones, right? And so I have a lot on that on the website, on the mywindphone.com website. But I would just like to stop and say that there's no right or wrong way. And so if we want to like kind of segue in creating, and I'm sure that's why you're all here, because that was what we said we would talk about. As far as creating a website, if you have questions that you want to ask us, we would love, please, speak up and ask the questions either in the chat or to Dina and I. But really, I think Dina and I both agree, there's no right or wrong way.
Right.
I would like to share that I did create my first wind phone. I thought it was okay to put it on this trail, kind of tucked away. Literally 2 minutes after I hung it on a tree, this lovely young woman came by and called her grandfather, who just had died, and cried and shared the experience with me. And it meant the world to me. Well, within a week, it was taken down. The trail never returned it, would never return my phone calls. So it was heartbreaking. So I'm on the side of trying to protect anybody from the heartbreak I felt after losing that first wind phone, that I feel it's very important to get permissions. There are a lot of people that just hang them and it works for them, and great, do you. But let me just tell you, it's heartbreaking. And so I will never do that again. Personally, I will go to Park and Recs or the arts committee in the community or the health department, because they offer mental health programs within the town, and I would seek out proper permission. That is kind of my big advice, because it was heartbreaking to lose that phone.
There was a group of artists in the very, very early Windphone days, a group of artists in Dublin, Ireland, who built a beautiful booth. It was white and green, and they put it way up on a more on sort of on a walking trail, very open kind of
Yep.
space. And it was there for a little while, and someone came by and destroyed it. And this was a wood and glass structure. It wasn't easy to destroy, but they didn't just destroy it. Then they took the pieces of it, sort of torn apart, and like piled them really neatly. It was a very deliberate, you can't have this here.
It was
And
less than a week after they
was it less
installed it.
than a week
Yeah.
after? So I think that this is an interesting part of, in this conversation about how to site and install a wind phone. You do have to give thought to the responses other people will have. They might be quite strong responses. And yeah, and you kind of have to be ready for everything. Your story is not the first story I've heard of
Right.
a phone disappearing.
I did a whole post on, not recently, about about the steps of. So location would be first. Location also often dictates the structure, right? Like as to what's going to be acceptable or not. And so those are things to consider. But why don't we open it up? Do you have all of our attendees here? Do you have specific questions? Allison's on this Zoom as well. She's created a wind phone. Has anyone already got a wind phone placed? Annie, you do, yes. Want to tell us where it is?
You'll have to unmute yourself. You guys are free to
Okay,
unmute yourselves at will.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I've placed, I lost my son. He was 33, and we actually go to a physical location for grief counseling. So it's a peer-run facility for different kinds of loss. So I thought I'd start there because that is, definitely a place I would get permission. So we put the first one there. And then the second one, I thought about where else, because I've been trying to get into my town. I've gone through Parks and Rec, I've gone through the mayor, I've gone through all that. I'm not getting anywhere. But another place I thought was a hospice.
Yeah.
So I contacted our local hospice hospital, and yeah, and they were delighted to have something like that in their garden.
Yeah.
Annie, that like just inspires me truly, that because Emily, my daughter, died at hospice care and they won't install a wind phone. I've offered to like finance
They
it.
won't.
I've gone and I've like, and I'm hoping they'll change their mind. But I will finance it. I will help it. I will do all of it. But they are not willing. But I think at this moment on the map, I have like 41 hospice centers.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yes,
So it
because
does make
people come back to visit the hospice.
It's the last place you held your person, right? It's the last
Yeah.
place to say goodbye. It would be such a beautiful circle to be able to go back then and visit there.
Yeah, they're very excited. And I did the colors that they wanted. I usually do the one in the Christie Center. Our colors are purple and like light gray. I did ours that one. And then their colors were royal blue and white. And I found a blue phone and a blue plaque with the gold writing.
Annie's pictures are on the My Win Phone gallery if anybody wants to go and look. Annie, do you want to say the town and everything so that people can find
Oh yeah,
it?
this is Austin, Texas. But I want to put them everywhere because when you lose, like especially like I lost my son, and it is, oh my God, that grief is I
But
don't
it's
even know
probably
how to
giving
say
you a
it.
beautiful place to focus that grief.
I
Yeah.
took I took a phone to a conference in Toronto and set it up in a very busy conference hallway with like people talking everywhere. And I found this little alcove, actually had a big mirror in it that made the space kind of nice. And I used some folding screens to sort of create more of an enclosure. And
Mhm.
I set up, because it was indoors and there was lots of room, I set up a sound machine with like a little brook sound, so that when people came into the space there was a little white noise, but also it brought them someplace else because of the sound of flowing water.
That's a great
And
idea.
Yeah, I like
and
that.
there was a lot of color in that installation. I used fabric so that it was a colorful space and not sort of drab and conferencey. And there was a woman, she left a very long note for me. And when she came out, I watched her sort of find the phone and sort of go in, and I saw her being uncertain. And when she was there for a long time. And when she came out, she stopped and she took my hand and she said, I left you a note. I can't thank you enough for this. And um, she had missed a call from her nephew, who then died by suicide, and um, had no place for those feelings of having missed his call,
Oh my God,
right?
yeah.
For years, she had been carrying this for like 6 or 7 years. Um, and for the first time, she could sit down and say, I'm sorry I missed your call,
Mhm.
and really talk about all of it. And she came back out of the booth and she said, I can't tell you what's lifted from me. I I I think especially for people who find the phone accidentally like that. Um,
My lights just flickered.
yeah. there's there's something there that, that a rotary phone randomly placed could offer both solace and a transformational experience. Or maybe nothing at all, because I watch people come away from the phone going, huh, right? It really depends. But yeah, that's something some people can do that.
Yeah, and I just shared in the chat, I don't know if everybody can see it, the Wind Phone Gallery. If you go there, what Annie is referring to is she made two beautiful wind phones. One is a beautiful blue on the outside and white on the inside, and one is purple. I love both, but I love purple. But Annie, do you have somebody that that helped you build it? I think that's sometimes a stumbling point where people are trying to locate one and they may get permission, but then they're like, okay, how am I actually going to build this? So how did you do that? Like,
So,
friends?
so I asked my husband, I said, I just want something that's just kind of looks like and it's only like 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5. The first one, so it's a learning block. Like the first one had like 6 pieces of wood, and the second one we did differently, so it's even easier, 5 pieces of wood. Then we put it onto a stake, and then we dug a hole in the ground, put the cement in, and put the stake in the cement. So that way it's concreted to that area. So we can remove the phone booth if we want to upgrade it at any time, because it's just attached to the phone, which is attached to the stake, and the stake is permanent. But
did you secure your phone into the housing? Did you make it so that no one can take that phone?
as best we could, we did put screws on it rather than just click it in.
Because
Right.
people have had we have had minimal, but some vandalism around the country, with the
Yeah.
phones. My best advice would be keep your eyes out once you place it or before for a second phone, in case that does happen, God forbid, or whatever, that you'll have something to then just pop in its place.
Yeah, and then we did get the plexiglass, and then screwed the sheet. We laminated the sheet, put it in the plexiglass, and then screwed that onto the side with the QR code and stuff.
If you go to the link that's in the chat, it's under Austin, Texas. You'll see Annie's 2 wind phones there. Allison also created a beautiful wind phone. I know she can't unmute herself. She's at work. Are you unmuted, Allison?
Very, very simple design. Very simple. Yeah.
Allison's is a booth, and it's beautiful. It's blue, and it's her yard, and she has a pantry and a library next to it for people with grief books. She has it's gorgeous, Allison. I know that you probably can't unmute yourself, but if you want to stick anything in the chat, we'll all see it. But again, if you East Nashville wind phone, and that's another beautiful wind phone. And Allison's very generous with her time and her ideas and thoughts. You can find her at her Facebook page or on the My Wind Phone group or on Instagram. So Allison, I'm sure you'll jump in at some point when you can. What questions do you have?
Well, I have a question for you, Amy, which is, what's the most common question, when people are just getting started? The most common question I get from people is, can I do this? Right? Just, can I do this? And I'm like, yes. And then we should talk about, what the steps are. So the steps are, for me, when I talk about this, choosing a site, right? And once you choose the site, if it's not on private property where you can have, where it's easier to get permission, and it's in a public space, just finding out who you need permission from before you go ask for that permission. You might have a list of 2 or 3 organizations. Think first about who's going to be your ally. So for instance, one a person called me from a town somewhere in New England, I'm not sure which, and was concerned about being able to have the phone, were there going to be people in town who were going to push back against the phone? And I said, well, the first thing to do is to decide who are your allies. Is there somebody in town who is part of the town in a certain way, either on a committee or something else, who would be your ally? And she said, oh, the librarian and I have been talking about this for weeks. I said, start with the librarian, ask her who's going to be friendly to our idea. And you want to start with the people who are friendly to your idea so that um, you have really people on board, right, within the community who are going to support you and be able to speak to the concerns that other people have. And you want to also, I think, be ready for those concerns. Vandalism,
Who's
uh,
gonna take it?
animals, critters getting wrapped up in the phone cord.
Yes. A
You
lot
know,
of commitment that you will maintain it.
right,
Yeah.
right.
And along the same lines as what you're saying, Dina, I always say to people, who do you know? Who do you know? We all know people. Who do you know? And so that does make it easier when you have somebody that you know that can help you advocate for wherever.
Yeah, right. And the other thing is, like, sometimes you'll have a hospice organization, for instance, that wants to cite a phone. They don't need any permissions, but they're trying to figure out, do we do something that's really low key and light, or do we actually create a path through the garden to this thing that's more structural? And these are the other kind of considerations. A wind phone is as ephemeral as the phone on my back seat that travels with me in my car and can be a phone any place, or as structural as, 4 posts in the ground and a roof,
Right.
and a bench inside and a writing table, right? It can be really quite. And so if you're doing something larger, um another consideration is handicap accessibility.
Yes.
Right? If you're building a phone in your booth, is your booth big enough for somebody in an electric wheelchair, which has a bigger wheelbase? Is it big enough for that person to slide in and out of the booth? They don't have to turn around in it, but if they're coming in forward, they're going to need to make a decision about whether they're backing in or coming in forward into the booth if they're in a chair, in a big chair. I know this is crazy stuff, but I've thought it through. And if you put the phone on the side of the booth instead of in the back, that person has accessibility.
We also have booths with more than one phone to address exactly what you're talking
Oh,
about.
that's interesting.
So there are some that are the height of a wheelchair that actually I've seen one where the wood piece turns out.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
So the phone's tucked into like the booth structure, right? And then it's on a hinge and the table actually, now this is a very complicated booth. And then it swings out for wheelchair accessibility. And all those things are so important. And then I also think too, Dina, like sometimes I feel like creators get kind of stuck on they want this grandiose thing. And you know what? We were talking last night, Dina and I, like there's something so beautiful and special about walking out in a wooded area on a park, and it's just on a tree and it's simple. So like, don't get yourself too hung up on it's got to be this extraordinarily stunning structure. It
Right.
just needs to be, and it needs to be whatever your vision is. It doesn't need to be like anyone else's, or it could be.
So there's a phone that I'm going to install at home that it's an old headset that like has little prongs where it plugged into the console, right? Um, and it's very phony. It's like clearly a phone. It doesn't have a dial, right? But it's there. And I might actually attach sort of a piece of a rotary, just the rotary thing. I'm not sure yet, but there's a place where my land intersects with a conservation trail, and I can put this on a tree on my side of the property line, and I don't have to ask for permission, but people coming through on the conservation trail can find it. And it's very minimalist. I thought I'd do very little plaque next to it saying, this is a phone of the wind. You can talk to anybody. It's a grief tool or something like that. And attach it with a bungee cord around the tree, right? Not very, somebody might steal it. I don't know, as an experiment for, until the winter to see if it, if people find it, because then they can email me. But so, it doesn't also, what I'm trying to say is it doesn't have to be a permanent installation. right? It can be something that you're not attaching forever to the tree, but that for a little while is there. Nadine.
What's your
Hi.
Hi there. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, this is so interesting. I am a hospice volunteer and an end-of-life doula, and we have what we call death cafes here I live in rural Vermont. I mean, dirt roads, everything, but we have death cafes, and the wind phone has come up. One of our community members lives right next to a beautiful cemetery. And she has there in the cemetery, there's a beautiful rock stone wall. And her property, right where the stone wall is, there's a chink in it. And she's placed her mother's old black dial phone in that chink with a little sign on it, what this is for. And that just gives me chills. It just gives me chills.
It's so Vermont.
It is, isn't it? Are you from Vermont?
No, but I live in Western Massachusetts on a dirt road. So
okay.
So Vermont.
Well, our property up here, it's an old family property. And below our house, we have a fire pit, and it's an ancient, or not ancient, but ancestral meeting ground. We have people come up in tents and they're campers. My husband's family comes up every end of September from all over the place. And the first year we did this, they brought ashes of their moms and then his cousin. And we have a little apple tree, our memorial apple tree. Well, my husband just built a beautiful pergola. I mean, big logs, And I've got his mom's old rotary phone, and we're setting it up there. And on August 3rd, when she passed, she said, all I want is a party. I don't want to have a funeral. I just want a party. So we're having a party, and the phone is going to be there.
Yay.
Yeah. And you can do it. You can do it anywhere. In
Brattleboro, the hospice organization in Brattleboro decided to place a phone in their memorial garden, which isn't by their office, it's in another place in town. Quite lovely. And I met there with the person who was doing the planning and to think about where and how to site the phone, because it's an uneven kind of space, and sort of how do we make sure that people can sit comfortably, and they designed the phone just with a little slate roof. It was very Vermonty.
Yes.
Right?
I love that
very
idea.
keeping and very very gently placed, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fond of the Goosefields wind phone, which is actually in Rhode Island, close to the shore, but somebody put it at the edge of their property, which borders on a big cornfield. The conservation path through it, so people are coming by anyway. And here's this phone booth with a little sign explaining, and it's sort of out of the blue, and you don't expect it, and it's just there. And the people live there, so it's easy for them to maintain. And it's just such a surprise in the environment. Come upon them, like when you come upon one in the woods where you weren't expecting it to be. It's
right.
Nadine, will you share the one that you just explained to us so that we can add it to the map? Will you ask your friend?
Yeah.
I don't think it was on our map.
Yes, I will.
I just approved. Now I'm afraid to say it's tomorrow, right? Oh, good. I got it right. Okay. Beautiful wind phone that she has, and it's on the website already, but I absolutely love this one. It's a portable wind phone. You could go to Facebook and see it. But do you have some thoughts on your portable one? Like any advice or tips for anyone that maybe also would like to make a portable traveling wind phone?
Probably not. I don't know that I have any idea what I'm doing. Um, but yeah, I heard about WinPhone the same time as Dina did on NPR on This American Life,
Uh-huh.
and I've been thinking about it for a long time. And then only recently, last year, decided to make one, and I got that vintage phone off of our local Buy Nothing group. I told people what I wanted it for, and like people rushed to give me phones. Um,
You know you're old when that vintage phone was the one you had growing up.
yeah.
It's gorgeous.
And so I got it off Buy Nothing, which I think is a great way to resource phones. If you have a local Buy Nothing group on Facebook, people were very, first of all, they were very interested in the idea. And then people were looking for phones for me for a while. It was really sweet.
Great tip. That's a great tip.
And I just decorated it because I'm weird like that. And I have a little basket for it. And when people around me or clients that I have had wakes or memorials and have asked me, can you bring your phone? Like they know I have it. I keep it in my clinic. Can you bring your phone? I posted a picture somebody took of me. I don't know who took that. I can't remember who took that of me when I brought it to a wake that was at somebody's home. And they asked me to just talk about it a little bit. And then I set it up they had kind of like a back quiet room. And I took it out of the basket. I set it up there. I put a couple of candles next to it, kind of set the space a little bit. I think I had some aromatherapy. And I think also like Dina, I put some cloths around to kind of soften the space a little bit. And then just set it up next to like an armchair and got some good feedback. But yeah, I don't really have, because I've only done it like I think 3 times. I don't really have a ton of wisdom or insight to offer, but that's the drop. And then I just drop it off and leave and then come get it later. So I extract myself from the situation. I'm not sitting around waiting for people to
I don't know. I
do it.
sometimes spy, but I don't hover.
Yeah.
You know,
And I would have loved to have spied, but I really people were closing the door anyway. So I just really wanted to just extract myself and let them have their space. And then I just came back and picked it up. So that's my only experience.
I think that's great. Those are great tips though. And someone that shared with me that they also had a Win phone at a funeral, they also put blank index cards and some pens next to it and allowed the people to leave notes. So they made their call and then people shared, a little bit of their call, or they didn't, or they left a memory or something. But it was also a nice spot then to capture maybe the emotion of that moment for people to leave for the family.
Yes.
That's lovely.
I wanna talk more about, we promised to talk about siting and installing. And the siting thing, there's deciding you want to do this, there's finding the phone, there's finding the location, there's making sure you have permissions of the people who are important to have permissions from. I'm a big fan of doing things without a committee because I think it's easier to just do things. With the phone of the wind, you can still do it without a committee if you want to, or you may want to have a committee. But knowing that piece about knowing who your allies in the community are, so that they can speak for you in allaying concerns of people in the community, so that it's not just you advocating for your phone, right? Those relationships are going to be important. You might look for someone in the faith community, a leader in a faith community who could speak for this. You might want to cross denominations in that because it'll be more a stronger kind of statement. That kind of thinking of like, who can help me forward this is one of those important pieces logistically when you're beginning. And then I think that you want to, then think about what you need in terms of materials, think about what you need in terms of accessibility. I'm making a list for you. Think about what you need in terms of explaining and signage, because the phone of the wind it doesn't need a lot, but it needs something that says, at least pointing people to where, everybody has phones now, but at least pointing to people to where they can find out more information and say, this is a phone in the wind, and it's here for you, right?
Let me jump on that signage part. On the website, I have examples of, I have signs that you can just print out. And I think someone in here said they used one, but just print it out, just laminate it, just put it on the side. I also have really nice QR code stickers that if you want to message me, I'll mail you, that could stick on the side of anything so that someone could scan it. Because I do think we can overwhelm people with too much history when they walk into the area and the space of the wind phone. People later like to go back and look at it. So, if you'd like me to mail you that, I'd be happy to. But I really do think that the whole, I don't know if any of you majored in business, but back in the 80s, they used to teach us that KISS theory, which is keep it simple. They said stupid, I say sweetheart, but keep it simple so that you don't overwhelm, and provide resources for people to then further go back and look and read more and learn more.
Yeah.
I would recommend that someone that's placing a wind phone perhaps even make their own Facebook page. You're always welcome to share on my wind phone Facebook page, and I'm sure with Dina, same thing. But there's something to be said for having one specific to your site. Where you can get that feedback yourself and share it, definitely share. And I know, like, I share pictures and videos all the time. Please share with me. I'll help you promote your wind phone. But sometimes what you also want to think about is, okay, it's up, it's located, it's good to go. How now am I going to share it with the community? Because it really is a beautiful grief tool that bringing awareness to it in your community is very valuable.
I think so. Amy, what do you have to say about dealing with pushback?
Oh, a lot. Positive things. Okay, so I guess what I want to say is, like, 98% of the time, you've gotten the correct permissions, you're going to be fine. You're not going to receive that, but there always are some. And Allison will tell you, and she's gotten some pretty heated feedback. There'll always be someone somewhere, someone's always going to say something, right? Like, there's always somebody in a crowd, and so you will get it. We have gotten quite a few people objecting on religious basis, and actually I have something I'm going to put on the website as far as links to how you can address that if that happens to you, because there is some really nice blog posts out there that people have written about this wind phones and religion. And I would say don't engage with those people. I mean, we did have a beautiful retreat center in Connecticut who the head monk, and I'm sorry because I don't know the correct terminology, he placed a beautiful wind phone. Within 4 days, he was required by his elders to take it down. So I think we go back to if you have the correct permissions, and he was in charge of the retreat center. He was heartbroken because it's gorgeous. But the kickback on the religious side, he was like, I've been told I've taken it down. So we go back to the permissions. You probably won't have as much kickback, but you will from the community have a few people that think it's, we've heard Allison, would agree. We've heard Satan's tool. We've heard you don't need to speak through something and such. I am going to put responses and how you can deal with that on the website for you. But yeah, I just say wind phone is a beautiful tool. It's for me. It's for so many others. It's not for everyone, and it's not for you. That's okay. But please allow everybody the space to breathe.
So was there, I'm directing this question really to the whole group. Has there been anything sort of magical that you've encountered that allayed the concerns of municipal officials or park officials, or what did you say that smoothed the way forward for you? What, you know, was there something that helped the other person get it?
I can kind of start there. It's on the website, and I don't want to destroy Taro Sasaki's words, but he has a quote about it's not religious.
Yeah.
That this is a tool, no matter who you are, and no matter what walk of life, and no matter what you believe in. And I feel like that's a really good quote to put out there when you're approaching people for permission, when you're putting the letters out there asking permission. I think that just to remind the people in whom you're seeking permission that this isn't religious based. This isn't, because I think that, like, understandably, government, you know, municipalities don't want to start a firestorm, right?
Right.
And so I think having, you know, quoting that so that right out of the gate, they know that this is not based in a particular religion.
I think that being able to pull up the gallery, to, you know, send them to the gallery. Look, there's hundreds of these. They exist. They exist in both private and public spaces, right? And it's not a challenge to anyone's beliefs, right?
One of the other things, Dina, too, is I'm going to start putting out there where they are as far as the venue, because I've gone back and I've categorized them, whether it's a hospice center, a hospital, a trail, a garden. And so if you're approaching a hospice center, for example, you'll be able to say, there are this many in the hospice centers in the United States or in Canada or where, you know, wherever country. And so I think that's also valuable because they want to, I don't want to say keep up, but of course they do. There are beautiful grief paths in a lot of hospice centers. They would like to be doing as well or offering the services that another hospice is offering.
I'm on the board of a hospice that's a community hospice with all that also has a residence, a small residence. And when I first approached them, before I was on the board, to place a phone there, they were like, no, we can't do that. And over about 2-3 years, it's changed. And now we're talking about where on the grounds should it be cited and how should we cite it? And, you know, should it be on a post or should it be in a booth or what should it be? And it's a really interesting process and conversation. And what I learned was it can take time for people to understand and accommodate this idea, and not to be impatient, right? To say, oh, this is a labor that requires hearts and minds, right? To move through, to create this space. And it to be patient, you know, and also, you know, there are people who put, like you did with that first phone that disappeared, right? You didn't ask permission. You learned from doing that, but it could have just stayed there if somebody hadn't reacted, and it would have been fine.
Right.
And right. So
Right.
that's the other piece of this that's important.
What questions do you all have? We don't want to keep you forever, but what questions do you have that maybe we haven't answered?
I think my biggest question is how to get permission from the city or whatever. I mean, I go to Park and Rec. I send, maybe I should go to, has anybody gone to like a town hall when they have town hall meetings?
Yeah.
Maybe that's my best bet.
So the thing, if it's a small enough town, like in New England, you know, we don't, in small towns, we don't have full-time employees who, like, we don't have a mayor. So but I, for instance, if I wanted to cite a phone in my town, I would call the librarian and I would call a friend who's on the select board, right? And the select board are the elected officials who make decisions in the town, right? So I would start very small with a conversation and some information. I'm thinking our town maybe could benefit from this. Let me show you some pictures. Do you have any ideas of where this could go in town?
It's a good idea.
I have a one page on the create page I have a 1-page handout that you could give someone.
Yeah.
I would actually even, you see a town truck at the park and they're doing, I would hand it to the person. There's somebody there. And that's what happened in Canada. These two men who were actually maintenance workers discovered it. They pushed it right through because their mom, one's mom died recently, one's dad died. And, you know, it was the actual workers on those parks and that actually was like, oh, this is a great idea. And they know who to take it to. And they're the ones that are going to do it. And,
Right.
you know, so if you have a few of them in your car and you happen to go by the location you're thinking and you see someone that's caring for the grounds, stop and ask them if you could give it to them, maybe explain it really quickly, and then ask them if they wouldn't mind taking it to the person
Yeah.
that they think would be better, you know, would handle it.
So we should probably start wrapping up. The other thing, I know that for people listening to the recording, you're bummed that you didn't get to ask your question and we didn't cover whatever it is. And I just want to say that email me or email Amy, you know, get in touch with us through Facebook, send us a message, whatever it is, and ask your questions, because we're here and we'll answer them as best we can,
Yeah.
or send you to the right place. The
And
other
ask them in the group, ask them in the Facebook group. You'll get a lot of other people's feedback as
Yeah.
well, which is really nice to have a lot of people respond to you and give you some ideas.
The other thing I want to say, and Amy and I talked a little bit about this last night and are unsurprisingly on the same page about it, which is that the Phone of the Wind is a labor of love, and not something that both of us hope will never get monetized by anybody. And that you know, I think we're preaching to the choir here with all of you, but that this is something that doesn't need to be commercialized. It's growing really fast, and it has that kind of cachet of the trendy a little bit right now, which having been in this space for a couple of years is lovely to see, but also sometimes I go, oh, somebody's thinking that way. So my sincere hope is that this continues just to be a grassroots thing of people creating space for grief in their communities, and space for healing in their communities.
Yes. I agree 1,001%. And I think that's, again, going back to location. You know, in the beautiful quote or Tara said, you know, you just can't place it anywhere and expect it to work, right? And so you know, to businesses popping up with them, and I'm not judging, like they may have a beautiful space within their business, and that's lovely. That's lovely. But I think you have to be very conscious about where you place it, that it isn't just placed to be placed, it's placed purposefully with the intent of offering someone a safe space for grief.
Great.
And I think
Thank you.
one last thing, Dina, we were just going to mention is those people that are out there that are watching the video and are creating. I would also just kind of caution you to be careful about saying, I created the first wind phone in this state or that state or whatever, because we have had people say that, and then they'll be interviewed on, you know, whatever for whatever. And then someone else will pop up and say, well, I've had the first. And then it becomes an argument, which it shouldn't be. It should be like, wonderful, we have more. And so I would just like maybe caution you in not claiming to be the first or the whatever. Right? Just because you don't want to have any animosity or any, you know, I mean, we're all in this because we love this concept. We have experienced grief and we want others to find the comfort in a wind phone. And so if we can allow that to maintain our intention, I think that we'll all be happier.
I totally agree. The other thing I would add is people have asked me, does it have to be a rotary phone? Well, no. And there's something about dialing, and I don't know if this is because I'm an analog native, but I don't think it's just because I'm an analog native. There's something about dialing and waiting that even if you just do a 0 or a 1, but that moment that lets you enter into the space of what the wind phone is. I don't know why this is, but I went to one once that had a push button phone and I went, oh, for me, this is a different experience. And I really prefer the rotary, and I don't know what it is. There are lots of things about the phone of the wind that remain mysterious to me in terms of how is it that I put a phone in this space and it becomes something different, right? Part of it is what we say, like those signs that you have available, what we say to people about how to interpret the space, is sort of it. But there's the visual interface, there's what happens for them as they come upon it, and they happen upon a phone of the wind and suddenly it's there. And so there's the visual interface, there's what they hear in the space around them and the soundscape. There's how the world smells. There's how the wind interacts with the site. I'm thinking about your stone wall in Vermont, right? And how the wind comes past those stones, and what a lovely space for that phone that is. So, there are so many elements, and if you are thinking about creating your own phone of the wind, consider these elements. Consider the sounds and the sights, and what do people see as they're on the phone talking when they look out, right? If there are people waiting to use the phone, is there a way for the person on the phone to not be aware of them, right? That they're not aware of a line, they're just having their space and their time. So, there are lots of different, and for people, can they be seen? Is there a way for them to hide their faces while they're in the wind phone so they can turn their back to public space and have that privacy, right? Because what we're looking for when we enter that space with the wind phone is the privacy to say what's in our hearts, and to be expressive that way. So these are all things to consider beyond permission. Nadine.
Yeah, going back to that dial, I have my mother-in-law's old phone, and it brings me back to when I was younger, and I remember my telephone number when I was 3. But there's something, the precision and the weight, the physical weight of moving that phone, and you almost hear it working. Almost hear it connecting. With
There's
each
some
turn.
research out there about that, and how the tactile dial affects you. So I think there is research to support that. Are there any other questions that we didn't answer before we go? But I appreciate all of you so much, and thank you for joining us. I mean, and please, I'm always in, like Dina just said, I'll reiterate, please reach out if you just even want to brainstorm. Always here.
The other thing I want to say is that people are very specifically looking for and working with ways to connect children with wind phones. And so we're seeing more of this, which is really exciting. I think my hope is that the wind phone world remains a way that people connect with each other meaningfully, with their folks who have died meaningfully, and that it remains a non-commercialized creative space for people to explore. That is absolutely my hope. Amy, this has been so much fun. Everybody
We'll
came.
do it again. But thank you all for joining us.
Again, and if you guys, I mean, we could do it again really as early as the fall. So if people listening to the recording want us to, just send us a note and we'll hear you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Have a nice day,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye.